One of the things I love about the Montgomery bus boycott and the risk that Martin Luther King took is that his wife was fully on board. She got what he was doing. She knew it would be hard. He knew it was going to take a year or more. He recognized it was going to take a lot out of him, and he prepared, and he got ready. And he said, this is going to be an unbelievable risk, but it's worth it. And he worked on alignment first before he took the risk. So the key here is to ask yourself clear questions. You feel like you want to bet on yourself? Good. That's important. Every great leader has bet on themselves. 3 questions you've got to ask yourself. There's the alignment question, there's the preparation question, and then there's the capacity question. The alignment question is, who does this serve, and am I ready to suffer for them? Who does this serve, and am I ready to suffer for them? You're thinking to yourself about, if I do this, who does it help? And am I willing to marshal my resources to make sure that I can suffer for these people over a long period of time? Who does this serve, and am I willing to suffer for them? The second question is the preparation question. This is simple. Have I done the work? Have I put in the hard work? Am I ready for this? If I take this shot, do I have a reasonable understanding of how this is going to go and why it might not go right away? Am I ready? Have I prepared myself? And then the third question is the capacity question. Is this bet asking me to operate slightly above my current capacity or way above my current capacity? If you're taking a risk and you've built your capacity and you're taking a leap that's a little bit above your capacity, that's great. If you're doing something that is way beyond your capacity and you have no time to correct or no time to learn, that's not a great bet. You've got to ask yourself those 3 questions, and making sure that you've got the alignment question right, you've got the preparation question right, and you have the capacity question right. That sets you up to really bet on yourself. And when it comes to betting on yourself, there's also signals that you can see that tell you that you're ready. And then there's also signals that you can see that tell you that you are not ready. This is helpful for you as an executive or an entrepreneur or an owner, or this is helpful for you as you're evaluating somebody else and you're giving them advice as to whether or not they should actually take a risk. Here are the signs that you'll know whether or not somebody is ready. One sign that somebody's ready is that they walk into a risk with optimism, but not naivete. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that they are excited by the opportunity. They recognize it's going to be hard, but if you ask them detailed questions, they have detailed answers. They can tell you how long it might take, if it goes wrong, how much it might cost, how much it's cost other people, how difficult it's going to be. They're excited, but they're not naive. Another sign that somebody's ready is that they're ready for the pain. They've raised their threshold of pain. They can go through long periods of ambiguity. They can go through moments where they don't fully understand how things are all going to come together. They can speak with confidence even though they don't fully understand how it's all going to work out. They can talk about the things that they do know without making up things that they don't know. When they have that high pain threshold, suddenly it means that they can go through long periods of sacrifice and still make it through. When people have raised their pain threshold, it's a huge indicator that they're ready to take the risk. Here's some crazy signals that you are not ready to bet on yourself. If you're more focused on appearing successful than actually being successful, if you're trying to prove somebody wrong, if you've got a Rolodex in your mind of all the people who've wronged you and you're going to do something amazing to make them all eat their words, you are not ready to take a risk, because it's all about appearing successful than actually being successful. Another signal is if you refuse to test or adjust. You've got plans, but you don't run them by anybody. You don't prototype at all. You just run with the very first idea you have, and you don't tell anybody about it. You don't pressure test it. You don't ask a lot of questions. You don't have people ask you questions. You just go straight from the hip and assume it's going to work out. If you're that kind of person, or you have that kind of idea and you haven't surrounded yourself with people who can help you think about this idea a little bit more and maybe make sure you have all the details aligned, you're not ready to take the risk. Here's another obvious one. You're not ready to take the risk when you are filled with fear. When you can't find a good reason to move forward, when you can't see the forest for the trees, when you are focused on all the small details and everything that could go wrong, and you're unable to see how this all might go right, you're not ready. You've got to be able to see the horizon. You got to be able to understand that, okay, I might go through some tough times, but it could turn out well if I do things right. When you can do that, then you're ready. But you're filled with unbelievable fear, you're not ready. This is why I love betting on yourself. The people who do bet on themselves, the ones that succeed, I work with a lot of them in branches. We love working with owners, entrepreneurs, and executives. And one of the things that we teach within branches is this idea that you got to have a couple things lined up before you take a risk and bet on yourself. And they all have to do with the inside. These are 3 key tips that we teach people, and I think are going to be really helpful for you. Number 1, you have to work on your inner life. You have to work on your ability to deal with challenging situations. That means thinking about your self-talk. That's the books that you read. That's the way you think about yourself. If you're a Christian, that's your prayer life and you thinking specifically about whether God brought you to this moment or not, whether he's going to bring you through this moment or not. Oftentimes when you go through difficult seasons, because you bet on yourself, things get harder before they get easier. And your inner life, the condition of your soul, will help you sustain those difficult moments because you'll believe that you're there for a reason. And regardless of how this turns out, it's going to turn out for good. You've got to make sure your inner life is ready to handle the pressure that's going to come in your outer life. The second thing you've got to work on is your inner circle. I love inner circles because it has everything to do with the people that you surround yourself with, the people who recognize you're taking a risk and they need to be there to support you. They're there to give you some direction and correction, sure, but they're there to give you support more than anything. They know that life is hard and you're going to need some encouragement from people around you. They'll give you perspective, absolutely. They'll give you encouragement far more often. By surrounding yourself with people who are smart, who are wise, who get what you're going through and are there to support you, that gives you a lot of advantages when you're going through a difficult season. So you got to make sure you have your inner circle right. And finally, you've got to make sure you've got inner structures. You've got to make sure that you're aligned across your organization. If your organization is taking a risk, you got to make sure that your staff is on board, your board is on board, the bank is on board. You got to make sure that everything is lined up. People understand what you're doing and why you're doing it as you're taking a leap. It's really important to have those inner structures ready to go. And the reason why those are so important is because when people get the vision and they understand the risk and they see what's coming, oftentimes they're willing to put a little bit extra in it to make sure that it happens because they believe that it's a calculated risk. It's a wise risk. And the upside is going to be far better than the challenges they're going through. And so when you make time to create alignment in the organization, to create accountability in the organization, and to create ownership in the organization, suddenly those inner structures make the outer risk much easier. Here's the bottom line. You don't want to bet on yourself just to avoid pain. You don't want to bet on yourself just to prove yourself to somebody else. You don't want to bet on yourself just to make it look like you're successful. You want to bet on yourself because you believe this is the direction you need to go. You are ready to go. You've taken the time to develop your inner structures. You make sure that you've looked at all the angles, and then this is the moment that you can take the risk, primarily because there is no moment other than this moment. You've done everything you can up until this moment to be ready for it, and now is the time. If you're a Christian, you recognize that God is with you. The risk is necessary to continue to live out the faith that he's called you to. And ultimately, when you take the risk, regardless of what happens, you're going to swing hard, do the very best you can, and let the chips fall where they may. And you know that this risk is going to turn out well, regardless of whether people recognize you as a success or not.